representatives, youth leaders, policymakers, civil society actors, all of us. And so thank you all for joining. At this point, I would like to invite a young woman, and we have something in common. We're both Guyanese, and she is the director of the UNFPA's Subregional Office, Dr. Allison Drayton. Welcome.
Good afternoon, good evening, everyone. And a pleasure to be with you all virtually. And a very special welcome to the youth advocates and young people who are with us today. I would actually like to follow on from Kobe's comments and say that, in fact, in the time of the pandemic, the issues around youth sexual and reproductive rights, youth access could never be more important because of the way that the pandemic has in fact kind of closed in the space for everyone. And I am really thrilled to welcome you all to the launch of the Roadmap for Adolescent and Youth Health during our first ever Adolescent Pregnancy Prevention Week in the Caribbean. As we all know, when a girl becomes pregnant, it can radically change the course of her life and have devastating effects on her health, her education, her income, and her future. She becomes more vulnerable to exclusion and poverty, and the health and socioeconomic consequences for both mother and child can be long-term and severe. In most cases in the Caribbean, it really is one of the major contributing factors to intergenerational poverty. Adolescent pregnancy is a major public health issue and is closely tied to human rights. Complications from pregnancy and childbirth are the leading cause of death amongst adolescent girls. At UNFPA, preventing adolescent pregnancy is at the top of our agenda, and particularly for this region, which I regret to note is second in the world in terms of the high level of adolescent pregnancy. Only sub-Saharan Africa beats us. I love it when my region leads, but I would like us to lead on more positive outcomes than these. So we have made this issue a priority in the region and work in collaboration with government, civil society organizations, UN sister agencies, and other development partners at the country, regional, and global levels. However, this pressing issue requires more attention, more urgency, and definitely more action, particularly in the context of the pandemic that we're dealing with. It is well known that often during crises, such as the current pandemic, needs for sexual and reproductive health services are overlooked, and incidents of gender-based violence increase, both of which I regret to note have been happening across the region. Mandatory lockdown measures and movement restrictions put in place to stop the spread of the virus create barriers to accessing life-saving and essential sexual and reproductive health services, including family planning, and for adolescents and youth who already face numerous hurdles in this regard, the consequences can be devastating. Adolescent girls often lack decision-making power over their bodies and lives, and early pregnancy is generally not the result of deliberate choice. Adolescents and youth who are already an under-prioritized and highly vulnerable group under regular circumstances are falling even further behind during the current pandemic. We are here today to shine a spotlight on this group and on all the young girls at risk of adolescent pregnancy in the region that need and depend on our support. UNFPA is committed to addressing the issue and to delivering a world where every young person's potential is fulfilled through youth participation and leadership, through empowerment and advocacy, through preventing and responding to gender-based violence, and through facilitating access to sexual and reproductive health information and services. We are proud to take part in this week and in the launch of the Roadmap for Adolescent and Youth Health, which resulted from the first ever Adolescent and Youth Health Congress of the Caribbean that took place a year ago in Port of Spain. Ladies and gentlemen, these actions highlight the commitment and partnership of advocates, health and social workers, policymakers, development partners, scholars, clinicians, and young people to safeguarding and improving the health and well-being of the young people in the Caribbean. Thank you, and I look forward to a very interesting discussion. Over.
Thank you so much, Ms. Allison, for sharing with us the importance of Adolescent Pregnancy Week in the Caribbean and also the launch of the roadmap. Now we'll go on to our second speaker, Mr. Andres De Francisco, who is the Director of the Family Health Promotion and Life Course Unit from Paho World Health Organization in Washington, D.C. Mr. Andres?
Thank you very much, and good afternoon or good morning to all of you. Minister of Health Guyana, Dr. Frank Anthony, Mrs. Helen Royer, Director in CARICOM, and Dr. Drayton, UNFP Director. A very, very big welcome on behalf of the Pan American Health Organization, and in particular to the young people that are joining this session. Let me start by congratulating you on the launch of the Caribbean Roadmap for Adolescent and Youth Health. I vividly remember last year's Congress, the high level of energy among the participants, as well as the spirit of optimism, unity, and collaboration. It was truly, truly inspiring. I'm very happy that the Congress was not just a standalone event, but that it generated and consolidated the collaboration across the Caribbean for improvement of the health and well-being of young people. And the interactions that were during that Congress really led to some very specific tasks ahead. This roadmap document summarizes the results of the Congress discussions and proposes clear and measurable action in priority areas, including mental health, sexual and reproductive health, environment, and climate change. A very important element is the call to action in the roadmap formulated by the young people who attended the Congress. And I want to assure you that Paho, we will do our utmost to respond to this call and help implement the roadmap recommendations. I particularly like the commitments of you as young people when you articulated it and indicated that you will actively participate and contribute to the implementation of this roadmap. This must be a partnership between us, the youngish, as it was said during the meeting, and you, the young. I know that this roadmap is being launched at the beginning of the first Caribbean Adolescent Pregnancy Prevention Week, so I like to say a few words about that. Paho and UNFPA jointly proposed the Caribbean Adolescent Pregnancy Prevention Week to create a platform for annual reflection and renewed commitment to address this important public health issue. As a region, we have a clear commitment in the Regional Plan of Action for the Health of Women, Children, and Adolescents, adopted by member states in 2018, where we have committed to reduce pregnancies in girls 10 to 19 years old by 10% by 2030. We all know that early pregnancy has a profound effect on adolescent girls, her offspring, her community, hampering her psychosocial development, negatively affecting her educational and employment opportunities, and contributing to the perpetuation of intergenerational cycles of poor health and poverty. And the data are clear. We are not doing well. More than 2 million girls aged 15 to 19 have unintended pregnancies each year in our region. We are the only region in the world with an increasing trend in pregnancies in younger girls, younger than 15, many of whose results are result of sexual violence. Girls with no or lower education from lower income groups, rural, indigenous, and Afro-descent girls are disproportionately affected by early unplanned pregnancies. The estimated adolescent fertility rate in the Caribbean is 60.2 per thousand girls 15 to 19 years old, lower than the regional rate of 66.5. However, there are major variances between countries, and some of the countries with the highest adolescent fertility rate in the region and in the world are in the Caribbean, Dominican Republic, Guyana, French Guiana. The good news is that it is possible to effectively reduce early pregnancy. We have examples from countries in our region that have successfully managed to significantly reduce adolescent pregnancy in the past 3 to 5 years: Uruguay, Costa Rica, and Argentina. The evidence on what works is also growing. Key evidence-based interventions include ensure access of adolescents to reliable reproductive information and education, ensuring access for adolescents to comprehensive health services and commodities, including contraceptives, addressing gender-based and sexual violence, keeping young girls in school. We have to implement these interventions at scale, ensuring that they reach girls and communities in conditions of vulnerability. And ladies and gentlemen and young people, COVID-19 is not helping us. It's actually creating much more difficult, but it increases our resolve. We have 10 years left until we reach the milestone of 2030. It is possible to reach the target of 10% reduction or more in adolescent pregnancy through our concerted efforts. Let us get it done. And I wish an important meeting like this one continues not only being a milestone, but continues keeping the message and the actions that we need in order to reach 2030 and beyond with a major reduction in adolescent pregnancy. Thank you so much. Over.
Thank you, Mr. Andres, for sharing with us those insightful information about adolescent pregnancy in our region. Now we'll go over to Clarissa Medina from Paho, who will be providing us an overview of the first Caribbean Congress on Adolescent and Youth Health in our region.
Thank you, everybody. We do see, I just briefly want to touch on the questions that are being posted in the chat. We are looking at them. I want to encourage our presenters to also take a look. If you want to respond in the chat, you may respond in the chat. In addition, we are going to have a panel and allow questions to be asked during that as well. I'm going to go ahead and start to share this video that we had done overviewing the Caribbean Congress, and we had such a great time. And this definitely highlights everything that we put together as a community. So I'm going to go ahead and start this. So sorry, I have a bunch of stuff up for today. Here we go.
I believe that HIV and AIDS is one of the major health issues affecting today's youth. I think that in order for this to change, sexual and reproductive health education can be added to the secondary school's curriculum.
On campus or in Jamaica on a whole, there's enough facilities or means by which people can get help for their mental health, or there's not enough proactivity when it comes to mental health.
Provide comprehensive sexuality education. Teach us that it's okay to know our bodies and be confident in relationships. Respect our rights when we access services and information. That way, we'll make the right decisions.
In the Caribbean region, we have not paid enough attention to adolescents and young people, and this has been a crying shame. We are the only region in the world to not have had any adolescent-specific initiatives, congresses, and it was time to put together all of our regional partners to get something going for our young people. What we know in the world of adolescent health is that there's specific things that affect the illnesses and death of young people. We focused on mental health, substance use, violence and injuries, sexual and reproductive health, matters relating to obesity and non-communicable illnesses, as well as climate change and environmental health.
climate change. So that's one of the big reasons that brought me out here, because I was really interested in hearing what persons have to say, especially youths, on climate change actions going forward and how we plan as a region to deal with this threat.
Mental health. As a region, culturally, we don't pay attention to it. We still have, in some areas, the mentality that a child is to be seen and not heard, and that any child that isn't behaving right wants something to cry for. So we haven't nurtured area or an environment for good mental health.
We want to ensure that the component of sexual health and sexuality is actually being taught in a comprehensive, age-appropriate, and relevant way in schools.
Health is a human right. Health is not just a privilege, but it is a right, and we're all entitled to our health and to be healthy individuals.
One of the beauties of the Caribbean is that although there are many islands in one space, each island has its own unique flavor and heritage just due to the history. So it's important for us to live up and maximize the uniqueness of each island. And we really want to harness the energy of youth and young people. And that's what these activities are all about. One of the major successes of this meeting is that we've come away with a roadmap, a specific pieces of paper with written ideas and thoughts of the road forward, with contributions from all our partners, from the youth themselves, from public health partners, from policymakers, from legislators. And the next road is to take this map forward and into action.
For me and for my friends back at home in Guyana, I really hope that we take this back. Me and some of my friends were discussing just how to go about doing the things after we go back. You know, should we have meetings? How often should we meet after this? Because we want something to be done about this.
There are amazing things that have been going on in the region that we didn't know. We are taking all these practices and programs back, and maybe we can work on them and see how the Dominican Republic can implement them. Yeah.
We're not seen, we're forgotten. So we need to make sure that they keep it at the forefront of the minds of our governments, of our people, that mental health, health and wellness of our youth, who are our future, is necessary and pertinent to us now.
Okay, so that was a video that we had put together overviewing everything that happened at the Congress. And as you can tell, our youth are super excited. And here we're launching the roadmap. It's definitely come full circle. So I'll pass this back over to our moderators.
Thank you so much, Clarissa. And while I was looking at the video, I was laughing and clapping because it was really a carnival of collaboration, partnership, communication, consensus, but also one of action, because you could just imagine 250 participants from 19 countries coming together to not just highlight the issues within the countries, but finding solutions when it comes to addressing the gaps or unmet needs in sexual and reproductive health and rights, mental health, nutrition, climate change, physical health and well-being. And it just goes to show that diversity is beautiful and there's strength in it, and we all have something to bring to ensure that the health of the region is really the wealth of the region. And so I just want to thank you so much, Clarissa, for highlighting that and also capturing the story and the essence of what the Congress was really about. It was very well put together. And speaking of the Congress and the roadmap, I would like to invite Jessica Anthony, who will give a background of the roadmap. Jessica?
Hi, Colby. Thanks. My presentation, I actually pre-recorded, and Clarissa should have that on a video as well.
I do. I'm about to share it. You don't want to say anything introducing it, Jessica, or you want me to go ahead and share?
Video. So.
Video? Okay.
Do we have sound? I'm not hearing.
Oh, someone muted me. 1 second. I need to stay on volume in order for my videos to be heard. 1 second. Here we go.
Hello, everyone. Greetings from Guyana. My name is Jessica Anthony, and my simple task here today is to give you all a little bit of a background and some context on how the roadmap that we're launching here today came about. Let me set the scene for you. Last year on October 14th, young and some young-ish people from around the Caribbean region converged upon Port of Spain, Trinidad, for the first Caribbean Congress on Adolescent and Youth Health. The Hyatt Regency was going to be our home for the next 3 days, and the air was abuzz with youthful energy, excitement, and promise for what this Congress was going to bring. It was the first Congress of its kind in the Caribbean region, and the possibilities were endless. As the 3 days of the Congress unfolded, we saw youth taking charge. They took charge of the sessions, helped to facilitate, made presentations, shared their knowledge, and ultimately made their voices heard. We had young people from around the region who were truly knowledgeable and passionate about the causes that they represented. It was a beautiful representation of the varying perspectives, cultures, and experiences that we have in the Caribbean region. It showed us that there is a lot that we can learn from each other and that there is strength in our collective voices. The culmination of this entire experience were the consultations that led to the development of this roadmap. On the final day of the Congress, all of the participants were engaged in consultations in which they outlined what the priorities should be for adolescent and youth health moving forward, and ways in which we can effectively target all of these areas. The discussions were engaging and everybody wanted a chance to be heard. The end result is what we present proudly to you today. This roadmap on adolescent and youth health. There must be no doubt that it is relevant and represents the interests of youth in the region accurately, because it was developed and fully endorsed by none other than young people in the region themselves. As was said popularly at the Congress, nothing for us without us. The roadmap focuses on some key areas, the first of which is mental health, substance use, violence, and injuries. The second area is sexual and reproductive health and rights, HIV, and STIs. The third major area is nutrition, physical activity, sports, and youth engagement. The final area is climate change and the environment. I am extremely honored to have played a part in the development of this roadmap. I look forward to the positive changes that will come about because of it. Young people are the future, and our health is important. We are glad to see that this investment is being made now to chart the way forward for us. Thank you all for being here on this momentous occasion for youth in the region. I would also like to share some messages from a few of the young people who participated in the Congress. Here is what they had to say 1 year later on this occasion. Thank you.
What does the roadmap mean for the Caribbean? As adolescents ourselves, this roadmap has directly impacted our health, and we take great pride in playing a role in its development. This roadmap was an excellent way to educate and to help others understand the complexity of mental health, particularly.
We appreciate the idea of creating a conference that included the youth in the decision-making of the roadmap as it relates to their own health.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Now, about a year ago, I was invited to Trinidad to participate in the first annual Caribbean Conference on Adolescent and Youth Health, and I must say it was quite a refreshing and unique experience. It was the first conference I had ever attended where young people were so fully immersed and actively involved. We were all given the opportunity to make presentations, moderate discussions, and ultimately to play an active role in the conceptualization and development of the roadmap. A year later, and we're now getting ready to officially launch that document, which will essentially serve as a guide to policymakers as to how they can improve our health across the region, especially in areas such as mental health, substance abuse, sexual and reproductive health, nutrition and physical activity, as well as climate change and the environment.
Is that everyone? I'm from Guyana. Yeah. And I was a part of the inaugural Caribbean Congress for Adolescent and Youth Health in Trinidad 2019. So we came up with a roadmap so that we can help pattern policy as it relates to adolescents and youth across the Caribbean. What does that roadmap mean for me? First of all, I want to say it was a privilege to actually be a part of a Congress like that. And I felt very included. It felt so great to actually be a part of a table, figuratively, where I would be able to make an impact, or my opinion would be considered, and it would help to make decisions or help to shape policy that would impact a lot of youth across the Caribbean, especially being a youth and having witnessed or experienced firsthand most of the problems that youth face. Specifically, the segments that involve sexual and reproductive health and social media. We were able to sit as a group of, I would say, close to 100 very talented, very brilliant, very important youth who represented their diaspora respectively. And we basically brainstormed and we came up with a lot of ideas and a lot of proposals that would positively impact youth across the Caribbean. And it's more than 10 million youth across the Caribbean. So it's a lot of lives and a lot of persons that would benefit positively from this roadmap. And I think it was a great idea, taking a novel approach to deal with some of the existing issues that have affected or are affecting youth and adolescents across the Caribbean for such a long time. And I am very confident in saying that I think that at the end of it, this roadmap will be a tremendous success. And you will see for yourself how incredibly important it was for us as youth, as well as policymakers, government officials, ministry officials, to come together in one forum where we can all exchange ideas and basically come down to a youth level to solve many of the problems.
What does the roadmap signify for the Caribbean? Well, first of all, it reiterates our leadership's understanding that we need to pursue models of development that are not just conducive to short-term economic prosperity, but we also have to think holistically and in terms of the sustainability of our region. But from an even more personal perspective, I believe that the roadmap signifies that in the Caribbean, young people are no longer just being considered as tokens in these processes of development. We are now being recognized as the active agents that we are in these processes of development. And one of the biggest phrases that would have come up from the Congress summarizes that for me: nothing for us without us as young people.
Okay, there we go. I'm handing it back over. Thanks, Jessica.
Thank you, Jessica, for those insightful information that you shared on the background of the development of the roadmap and for allowing all of us to hear from the past participants to see where they are now 1 year later and how they feel about what we're doing. Now we'll go on to our next presenter who will be speaking on the actual launch of the roadmap. We present to you the Minister of Health in Guyana, Dr. Frank Anthony.
Thank you very much. Distinguished young and youngish people across the Caribbean, representatives of Paho, WHO, UNFPA, CARICOM, and other UN agencies, moderators, friends all. I'm indeed pleased to join you this afternoon. As you are aware, over the decades, the Caribbean has made significant progress in improving the health of children and adolescents. However, the future is now quite uncertain. Many of the gains that we have made are now threatened by COVID-19. Schools are closed, health services restricted, and economies are struggling, and the most vulnerable are now imperiled. If there was a time for action, that time is now. Before the pandemic, and when the first Caribbean Congress on Adolescent and Youth Health was held, we were grappling with climate change, things like ecological degradation, pervasive inequalities, and limited health services for our young people. At the Congress, I'm told that there were wide-ranging discussions that have formed the basis of this roadmap, which was aptly titled Championing Our Wealth, Promoting the Health and Well-Being of Adolescents and Youth in the Caribbean. This document advances the arguments as to why we need to invest in our children and adolescents. The evidence is quite clear. Early investment in children's and adolescents' health, education, and development have dividends that compound throughout their lifetime. These dividends also accrue to their future children and to our society. Successful societies have continuously invested in their young people and they protect their rights, and this have created a virtuous cycle that has led to a more progressive, stable, and prosperous society. This documents create a roadmap for decision makers to embrace, both at the national level and at the Caribbean level. It advocates a life cycle approach looking at the potential vulnerabilities of young people along the pathway and what can be done to rectify them. As was said before, there are a couple key areas that was identified, and these areas include mental health, substance abuse, violence, and injury. It also includes sexual and reproductive rights, HIV, and STIs. It also includes nutrition and physical activity, climate change, and the environment. Here in Guyana, perhaps over the last year, we might have taken a cue from what was developed by you in this roadmap. And so we have already taken a number of steps to start integrated some of the findings that you have outlined in this roadmap. As it is now, we have done a review of, and we have created a situational analysis of young people and adolescents in Guyana. And we have drafted a new adolescent health strategy for young Guyanese. We have also looked at the Latin American and Caribbean adolescent standards and guidelines. And we have now fashioned our own local guidelines And this has now been incorporated into our adolescent health program. We have started a special program to help to reduce teenage pregnancy. And we now have this program being implemented in 2 of our regions, Regions 1 and Regions 9. We have also been working at our health centers and health clinics to create youth-friendly spaces. And so we now have in about 52 health centers what we call adolescent health and wellness clinics, so that young people can come to these clinics and they would not be troubled by adults who are providing care, but rather they would be embraced. We have also set up in our school system a number of adolescent health clubs and peer education and train a number of peer educators to work in the area of adolescent health. And we have now also created a sexual and reproductive health policy, of which the rights of adolescents are also included in that program. So we have taken a cue from you, and we have already started working on the roadmap and trying to integrate that in policy development here in Guyana. But there are still a number of other things that we'll have to do. And over the next couple of months to year, we'll certainly want to include those things in our program here in Guyana. I want to commend all the young people for their collective wisdom as is encapsulated in this roadmap. I also want to thank Paho, WHO, CARICOM, and the UN partners for their leadership in this process. I want to urge these agencies and the young people to remain vigilant so as to ensure that this roadmap is not just another document, but we urge governments across the region and programs across the region to get the findings and recommendations that were made in this roadmap, to get it implemented and to become an integral part of our national development strategies for young people. So whilst we have challenges with COVID, we see an opportunity here in using this roadmap so that future generations of young people in the Caribbean can benefit from it, and that we are able to provide a cleaner and safer environment for our Caribbean youth. And so with these few words, I officially now launch the roadmap that will bring us health and wealth for the Caribbean young people. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Frank Anthony, for officially launching our rural roadmap, but also using our country, Guyana, as an example of what Caribbean adolescent health policy could really look like and what it could really mean. And thank you for laying out the examples of the progress that we would have made as a country with our sexual and reproductive health rights policy, our national reintegration policy for adolescent mothers, really demonstrating how other Caribbean countries can really look not just to our model, but also to the roadmap and see linkages and how we can really push through adolescent and youth health in the Caribbean region. So thank you so much, Dr. Anthony. At this point, I would like to invite Mrs. Helen Royer. She is the Director of Human and Social Development at CARICOM, and she will share some brief remarks with us.
Thank you. Thank you very much. The Honorable the Honorable Frank Anthony, Minister of Health of Guyana, Dr. Jabaz Baboso, Director of Paho, Dr. Drayton, Director of UNFPA, Dr. Andres De Francisco, Director of Family Health Promotion and Life Course, Paho, World Health Organization, Ms. Jessie Shutani, Subregional Program Coordinator, Paho, other representatives from our partner institutions, moderators, participants, good afternoon. I bring warm greetings from Ambassador Erwin Larrock, our Secretary General of CARICOM, on the occasion of the launch of the roadmap for promoting the health and well-being of adolescents and youth in the Caribbean. I also wish to congratulate the Pan American Health Organization for advancing this very important next step towards the realization of the decisions and recommendations from the first Caribbean Congress on Adolescent and Youth Health held last October in Trinidad and Tobago. Ladies and gentlemen, a roadmap is a very important and useful tool. And in its simplest layman definition, a roadmap keeps one from getting lost on the journey towards the desired destination. For those of us who are engaged in national and regional development, a roadmap is a strategic plan which provides the major steps or milestones that will enable us to attain the goals and desired outcomes we seek to achieve. This roadmap is designed to promote the health and well-being of adolescents and youth in the Caribbean, perfectly fits these definitions. Admirably, the development of the roadmap encapsulates the salient areas of adolescent and youth health, as it was well designed and forged by the full participation and endorsement, noting that there were over 200 Congress participants, including policymakers, program managers, healthcare providers, international and regional partners, but most of all, young people. For this reason, the roadmap covers key issues and concerns for and about adolescents and youth, highlighted under the 4 thematic areas addressed during the Congress, namely mental health, substance abuse, violence and injuries, sexual and reproductive health and rights, HIV and STI, nutrition, physical activity, sports and youth development, and climate change and the environment. This roadmap also provides guidance on major milestones to be achieved and identifies key responders or actors in the process. The structure of the roadmap presents no major challenge for implementing the recommendations contained therein. Ladies and gentlemen, having reviewed similar initiatives and recommendations, we can only hope that as policymakers and implementers, the recommendations will be translated into practical steps towards the advancement of what the roadmap has articulated. Based on what we have in the roadmap, we are cognizant that it is an excellent map to the health and wellness of our youth. However, the slow progress at times makes the process seem daunting. But let us join hands and collaboratively address this together. Recalling the adage, if you want to go quickly, go alone. But if you want to go far, go together. Time is of the essence. So let us not ignore these important issues or delay in addressing them, which no doubt will cause us to lose the momentum and the gains already made. I therefore urge us to take action now. The COVID-19 pandemic has introduced additional challenges for service providers and adolescents and youth in general, but more so for those who, due to their unique circumstances, are particularly vulnerable. So what can we do to ensure that this comprehensive, all-inclusive roadmap takes us to our desired goal? I wish to suggest that the answer is contained in the first 3 words of the titled roadmap, championing our wealth. Whether we believe wealth to be the health and well-being of our young people or their creativity and innovative spirit, there is no doubt in my mind that young people are game changers of today's society and the pivot to national and regional development. If given the opportunity and necessary support, they can lead the way to realize economic growth and poverty reduction at national and regional levels. They are indeed our greatest assets and resources yet to be tapped. As a public health professional involved in recommending and implementing policies, I have come to appreciate the value of health and wellness and its contribution to economic, educational, and social development at the individual, family, community, national, and regional levels. But I also firmly believe that if we are to achieve the change we are seeking, we, each of us, must see ourselves as champions for change, and we must be prepared to step off the stage, as it were, and run alongside our adolescents and youth. Yes, run if we want to keep up with them in the pursuit of goals of this roadmap. The CARICOM Secretariat has taken note of the actions to be implemented at the regional level and the regional public goods to be realized, and is committed to continued support, which it has been providing through the various programs of the Directorate of Human and Social Development and the Office of the Secretary General. A number of these actions are already in place in each of the thematic areas addressed during the Congress. These include violence against children, problematic substance use, unhealthy diets and obesogenic environment, harmful use of alcohol, gender-based violence, youth empowerment and business development, new initiatives, for example, plans to engage young people in programs to mentor and train youth leaders and engage in youth decision-making and strategic planning on issues of climate and environment and its impact on health have also been added to the program of work through the CARICOM Paho project on climate change and health systems. In closing, I wish to thank all of our partners and collaborators who have over the years so richly contributed to the region's development agenda. For adolescents and youth, we look forward to partnering with you as together we roll out this roadmap. I thank you. Over.
Thank you so much, Mrs. Royer, for sharing CARICOM's commitment and support for the roadmap and the process, because as we would say in Guyana, it takes two hands to clap. But in this context, we need more than two hands because governments can't do it alone. Civil society organizations cannot do it alone. Young people themselves cannot do it alone. And so it's really great to hear, number one, we have the support of governments. And we heard the example of Dr. Anthony just now from Guyana, but now we're also hearing from CARICOM. And we hope that this support continues because we have some daunting and challenging times ahead. In the present context, we have the COVID-19 pandemic and the inequalities remain, and we must ensure that we finally deliver for good for vulnerable women and girls, adolescent, youth, and all of our young people in the region. And so I thank you so much. At this point, I would like to invite our youth panelists to firstly introduce themselves to us, but also to share briefly what does it mean, what does the roadmap mean for them in the context of their specific area of focus. So we know that there are 4 priority areas that the roadmap focuses on. The first one is mental health, substance abuse, violence, and injuries. Second is sexual and reproductive health and rights. Third, physical activity, sports, and youth development, nutrition, and also we have climate change and the environment. And so I would just like to invite our youth panelists to share with us what does the roadmap mean moving forward for those issues to ensuring that we deliver for good for young people. We can start with Renata. Or if we don't have Renata, or if she is, we can probably start with John. Since you're on, yeah.
Yes. Hello, everyone. My name is Jan Santana. I'm from the Dominican Republic in of Haitian descent. It is a great pleasure for me to be here. Thank you to all the authorities that are present with us today, and thank you to Paho and UNFPA for this amazing work that we're doing together in order to ensure the health of our people, our young people in the region. My focus area is climate change and environment, and we have to consider that climate change has had a significant impact on people's health and well-being in the Caribbean region, disrupting physical, biological, economic, and ecological systems. And this roadmap plays this important and crucial aspect of our life in light in order for us to tackle it. And as we make sure that as we advance in other areas, also this one is included, because the thing is, we, the young people, are the ones who are going to live in this world. And as time passes by, climate change effects in our planet, especially in our region, are only getting worse and worse. So the roadmap actually focused on finding a way of making the life of all young people better, but building better as well in terms of environment and tackling climate change. Over.
So can we invite Renata?
Let's go ahead and start with Pierre.
Okay. Okay, so Pierre, because we know that you have to leave shortly, we'd just like to ask you, what exactly do you think about the present inequalities that we have? How exactly can young people ensure that they hold leaders, policymakers accountable to ensure that these actions and outcomes are actually delivered?
Okay, so first of all, thanks for being a part of this panel. I am always happy to be engaged in spaces where young people are speaking passionately, and we have the attention of high policymakers and government members, and even of the Pan American Health Organization to really advocate on behalf of young people. Particularly in my capacity as the Youth Technical Advisor for the Healthy Caribbean Coalition, and even personally as a law student and aspiring attorney, I feel extremely passionate and happy to see that we have this document, this roadmap, that captures essentially the voices of young people and our commitment to pushing and advancing the rights of young people in relation to their health. And I think that what we specifically are asking for, or we are asking to be improved upon, is an actual introduction or the introduction of legislation across the region to implement these acts that we've asked for, that we've set out in this roadmap. It's very nice when you speak about the policies, and the roadmap has very aptly captured them all so that we can see in a very real way, in a very direct way, what it is that young people are asking for in relation to non-communicable diseases, in relation to sexual and reproductive health, in relation to climate change. And it is integral. It is important for these things to actually happen, to be put in place, that we have legislation that's implemented and introduced as comprehensive and addresses and protects the rights of children, young people, women, and vulnerable groups of society.
Thank you, Pierre. Michelle?
Yes, thank you, Colby. Thank you, everyone. It's an honor to be part of this this panel with so many passionate young people, but also with the UNFPA director, Ms. Allison Drayton, and also the minister from Guyana, and Dr. Frank. Really amazing. For me, I think to introduce myself, I'm Michelle Belfort. I'm from Suriname, and I'm a sexual reproductive health and rights advocate. And for me, this roadmap is so very unique because it puts young people at the center. And that is what's really needed. It also captures the promise of accelerating the ICPD. And it really targets specifically the issues which young people have been facing. An example, one of them is to look at the main challenges of the improvement of our sexual reproductive health and rights sector, making it more accessible to young people, really targeting issues of training healthcare workers to really respect the human rights of young people. And that also is one of the key factors when we're talking about reducing teenage pregnancies within the Caribbean region. Aside from that, I think as a Caribbean country, we need you to have access to age-appropriate services. And we also need to focus on comprehensive sexuality education. for far too long, the Caribbean region has been on the background, or has not had a high level document like this that actually is relevant to achieving the ICPD agenda. But not only that, also looking at the Beijing platform of action, that this also will advance women their position. As you know, we're also in the pandemic currently, in the COVID-19 pandemic, and we will need a whole of society response. We will need all stakeholders, not only UN agencies, but also government institutions, and also civil society, to be part of the COVID-19 response. And I saw one of the questions actually in the chat box, that I think the specific question was that we've heard the evidence that COVID-19 has on domestic and gender-based violence, and it has increased adolescence and teenage pregnancy. Now we're seeing within this pandemic that SRHR is put on the background even more so than it was before. People are really focusing on food, nutrition, etc., which is fair, but if we do not focus on SRHR and gender-based violence, we're creating a pandemic within a pandemic. And this roadmap could not have come at a better time to really provide the needed actions from young people to accelerate the promise of the ICPD agenda. I'll keep it short, Kobe, because I see the time. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Michelle, for your thoughts and your perspectives on sexual and reproductive health and rights in the context of the Caribbean region. At this point, we'd invite Christopher Jilks.
Yes, good evening. Hi, good evening, everyone. My name is Christopher Jilks. I'm from Barbados, and I also represent the Barbados Council for the Disabled, which is the umbrella body organization for persons with disabilities here. And I'm also an advocate for persons with disabilities. Well, how do I see the roadmap? First, the roadmap was one of the most important documents which was created to give the youth the opportunity to voice their opinions on issues that they're facing on a day-to-day level, not only as young adults, but it also prepare us for what's coming in the future, so that we can guide those who are coming up as well after us. So within my scope is on sports. I'm just going to touch briefly on that a bit. What I can add to that, sports is, usually sports is one of those recreational, it's seen as a recreational something, but sports is more than recreational. Sports, for example, building stronger and more inclusive communities. Sports benefits are not limited to individuals, and anyone can be included. But since we have been hit with the COVID-19 pandemic, which I've seen that a lot of the sport activities has been placed on hold because of the restrictions and all those areas. And also I've seen that persons were able to utilize the different platforms to get things in place, like they will have training via Zoom, or you can still have physical activities within your own comfort zone. But this is why I believe that the roadmap would help to push sporting activities, physical activity, and also develop young people in the Caribbean. Thank you.
Thank you, Christopher.
You're welcome.
And lastly, but Clarissa, you wanted to say something?
I want to interject really quickly because Pierre, you had shared with us that you wanted to make a point, and we want to be respectful of your time and give you the opportunity to speak.
Yes, so I just want to capture some stuff before I have to go. Necessarily, I am really happy to be engaged in this space, and I think thank you very much, Dr. Anthony, for being a part of this call, because it's very important to have policymakers a part of the conversation, because you essentially and persons in your capacity have the power to make these things happen. In the Caribbean, we've seen a particular situation as it relates to non-communicable diseases. And this is the area that I'm speaking under. We have a situation where 1 in 3 children are obese or overweight within the region. And it's a growing epidemic. I mean, we're using words like pandemic, but it's a growing, worrying situation. These children have rights. And it's the right of every child to have access to the high sustainable standard of health, and we're simply not ensuring that they have access to that. When you look at systems where in the Caribbean, we have gaps, major gaps in protecting our children in the food and nutrition system. We don't have mandatory front of package labeling. We don't have increased taxes on sugar sweetened beverages. And within our schools, we don't have proper legislation and policies in place to protect our children and ensure they have access to healthy and nutritious meals. So when we have those gaps in the system, and when we have those gaps in protection of children, then we end up with a situation we have today, where increasingly our children are developing non-communicable diseases at early and earlier stages in life. It is our duty as stakeholders, it is our duties as guardians of our children to ensure that they have access to their full rights. And it means that we have to put in place comprehensive legislation. It is very fine. It is very comfortable. We feel happy to say that, you know, we have policies in place. It feels happy to say that we are committed verbally to doing this. But we need that political will to be transferred and translated into actual action and make that happen in the form of legislation, which speaks to having children protected in a very comprehensive way. So when we have legislation that says we're going to protect children by ensuring that no fast food organization is allowed to advertise to children within their schools, or we're going to put legislation in place that says, you know what, children should have access to healthcare, proper healthcare. We're going to put legislation in place to say, you know what, we're going to put front of package labeling in place so that children know what foods are not the best for them. When we have this comprehensive legislative systems, then our children can be fully protected. But until then, we only have a system where persons may decide to do it, may not decide to do it. They may agree one day, they may disagree another. We need to ensure that our children are not left to the whims and fancies of when this government says they're going to do it, or when this political member says they're going to do it. We need children to be protected in a comprehensive way through legislation that says, we see you, we appreciate your health, we are going to protect you. Yeah. Thank you very much. It's really happy to be a part of this call.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Kobe.
Pierre. Thank you, Pierre. And you really hit the nail on the head. At this point, we'd like to invite Renata.
So Renata is having problems with her
Technical
internet.
issues, so we can probably, okay, cool.
Let's go ahead.
Hi.
Oh,
Hi, I wanted to add one more point to the discussion, Colby. As in Suriname, an example, you know, as civil society, we need to be more organized as well if we want to advocate for an example, sexual reproductive health and right issues. We have a lot of organizations working not together but on a crossroad, and that's not actually what we need. We need to build coalitions not only in Suriname but within the Caribbean to actually advocate for these rights and be more organized. And there's a lot of power within that. And for all youth panelists and all youth advocates on this call, it is our duty to actually bring this roadmap to our country and to ensure that it is very localized, and that any initiative that we take actually uses this roadmap to actually lead to results to achieve the SDG agenda of 2030, to capture the ICPD promise. And I really just want to emphasize this because it's an issue that we're having across the region, and there is a lot of power within civil society, within these youth organizations, and we really need to harvest that.
Thank you, Michelle. I do want to interject one more time, guys. The Minister of Health of Guyana, Dr. Frank Anthony, is also a panelist. So I would like him to bring him back into the chat and allow him to participate as well.
Oh, thank you very much. I was really enjoying the discussion that the young people brought to the table. But I think the topics that you raised are very important ones. And of course, we also have to couple what you have discussed already with the challenges that we have with COVID. As you know, a lot of young people perhaps don't take COVID very seriously. And so they would probably be taking more risk. So that's one area that we have to look at. But we are also seeing now that with COVID, that young people who would recover very quickly in a couple months' time, they can also have what is now termed as long COVID, where they can feel fatigued, or we're now seeing cases of cardiac diseases and so forth. So that's an area, perhaps as we navigate our way through the pandemic, that we'll also have to focus on, and it's something that we have to think about. In terms of mental health, we see, again, with COVID, that there are more challenges because a lot of young people are at home. Some young people cannot go to school because those schools are closed. And therefore, it's another thing that we have to think about. With young people at home, parents are at home, those who are staying at home, because of curfews or lockdowns or things like that. And we can see in those homes that you have all kinds of things that are happening. We have abuse. We have people whose mental health can be affected because they have, in some cases, a lot of irrational fear and anxiety. And we don't have robust systems where we can reach out and try to alleviate some of that mental health challenges that we're seeing with people who are staying at home. So this is another area that we perhaps would have to look at, and maybe as you work to integrate this roadmap into your country's health plan, that you think about how we can integrate some of these new challenges that we're observing. And I think once we're able to do that, we'll create a better and safer space for young people. So I think this has been a very enriching discussion, and you're bringing a lot of passion to the discussion. You're also bringing a lot of new ideas, because sometimes we think we have the answers, but you have found a different way of expressing yourselves, and also bringing that youth perspective and coming up with more innovative solutions of how we can address some of these problems. So I wish you well.
Thank you, Mr. Anthony. Now, as we continue, we would like to invite Renata to share with us. Is Renata here?
Hi, good day. I'm here.
Hi, Renata. Can you tell us more about how the roadmap links to advancing adolescent and youth in the region for mental health?
Yes, well, I think a lot of us know, and well, probably I can talk from my country's perspective, that mental health was always a taboo topic. All right, you don't talk about it. It was a hush-hush thing. If you had somebody in your family who had a mental, who was struggling with some form of mental health that was affecting them, then people wouldn't talk about it. People suffer through depression and don't talk to anybody about it. It's sort of frowned upon. So I think having it as one of our featured health factor that we're focusing on in this roadmap is very important, and I look forward to speak about it a little more again. Thank you.
Okay, so as we continue with our question and answers part of our panels, we will still like to hear from you, Renata, as we go on to the actual questions that we have here. Is that okay?
Yes, I'm hoping that my connection stays. All right.
Okay. So emotional and mental health is a major issue and concerns for adolescents and youth. How do you see the roadmap addressing this issue?
Well, for one, it's written right in the recommendations of the roadmap that we are urging government to implement institutional, legal, financing, and service arrangement to ensure the needs of adolescents are met. So we're requiring government to provide counseling services for youths and adolescents, youth-friendly and outreach workers, youth-friendly outreach workers and online social media-based service. We are also recommended and trying to push through and urging government to ensure that all caregivers personnel who work with children and adolescents and young people are trained they should be able to see and notice the common sign of mental health, substance use problems, self-harm, and suicide. Because we know suicide is a huge problem for young people in our Caribbean. It may not be for one particular country, like I think here in Dominica, it's not as high as opposed to other Caribbean islands, which we have heard of at the conference, that the percentages were going up. So suicide is a huge problem, and even right now with COVID, it has sort of make the situation worse. All right. So those who work with young people, especially those providing online services, needs to be sensitive and sensitized about mental health and how to approach it. We are also in the roadmap, we are also urging and we are recommending that we collaborate with ministries of justice to provide the processes for reporting gender-based violence, IPV, and all forms of sexual assault and abuse. And incidences among adults. Can you hear me?
Yes, I'm hearing you.
Right, okay. Because our young people are vulnerable. They are vulnerable to sexual exploitation, also entering into transactional sex, either forced because of family life. So all these affect their mental health. So we are also recommended to engage in raising awareness and reinforcing the roles of our communities, people in society. Okay, they too have a huge part to play in the lives of our young people, and we are reinforcing the role of society in preventing and responding to forms of violence and abuse. Okay, if you see it's happening, especially to our young girls that may come from poor backgrounds, right? They tend to have, I'm not saying all of them, but they do tend to have very low self-esteem. And so they do get bullied at school, and some of them fall prey to early pregnancy, adolescent pregnancy. So we are saying, and all of this sort of contributes to their mental health. And so we are creating awareness on all the risk factors for high-risk substance and alcohol use. As you know, that substance and alcohol use also complicate and issues of mental health. Also in the roadmap, we are seeing that we are implementing evidence-based adolescent and youth prevention programs that address alcohol abuse, as I said earlier, and mental health, including treatment and care. This, I think, can be much more progressive or much more of a to get a more positive outcome instead of just locking the person up. All right, rehabilitation is much more likely to be successful if the youth if we have customized solutions with trained personnel to help these young people as they navigate through lives. So again, there are lots of things or lots more that we can add here, but for time, I'm just leaving with these three, where we are encouraging our government to implement more institutions and provide services to help our young people. We are calling on caregivers, our government again, to train caregivers and personnel who provide social work, who provide counseling, who work with young people, and also to create an awareness within our communities to help our young people as they go through those mental health challenges.
Great. Thank you, Renata. I know, Michelle, you have a point to share on mental health, and then I have a question for you based on your presentation. So, Michelle, you want to jump in?
Yes, thank you very much, Kobe. I think this what this roadmap also provides that for me is really amazing is that directly for the health sector, it addresses the thin line between mental health and sexual reproductive health, and that mental health should be addressed routinely as part of sexual reproductive health services. For example, 20 to 30% of more women experience depression during pregnancy or after childbirth in developing countries. This roadmap puts young people at the center, and what that does is actually addressing the issue of adolescent pregnancy, because especially young women, young teenage women, young women with a teenage pregnancy, in example, need this support when it comes to their mental health. And there are ways to incorporate this in our health system to better ensure that not only mental health, but the comprehensive health factor of young girls is being looked after.
Thank you, Michelle. And off of that, I would like to ask you, Michelle. So we know comprehensive sexuality education has not been taken seriously on board. The Congress really acknowledged the importance of CSE in preventing adolescent or teen pregnancy. What would be your elevator pitch to the policymaker on the panel so that CSE can be included in the school curriculum? What would you say to the policymaker on the panel?
Yes, thank you for that question, Kobe. For me, I think for every youth advocate or every peer-to-peer educator in the field, this is one of the main things that we're advocating for, because comprehensive sexuality education is one of the basic life skills, one of the information that any young person would need to achieve their full potential. It is a skill to be able to plan ahead of time how many children you want, and to also understand for yourself what sexuality is, and to be comfortable with your own body, which actually also adds to which also supports their mental health. Aside from that, via schools, it is easier to reach children, because in the Caribbean, we're also dealing with this issue where it's taboo, and it's a bit hard to reach parents who talk about their children, to talk to their children about sexual reproductive health. And if we can target these children via schools, by not with one lesson of HFLE where the teacher is a bit uncomfortable to provide the information, but where we actually have it incorporated into our curriculum, where it's very comprehensive and young people really get to learn about this issue to plan ahead. It only adds to the economic growth of a country, because if we have an example, more young women, more young men that can plan their future ahead of time, they can reach their full potential. And if they can reach their full potential, they can most definitely become great men in our society. They become the next teachers, they become the next lawyer, the next doctors. And you actually, as a country, we actually have more people paying taxes, and more people bringing an income to the country, where we can actually look forward to sustainable development and sustainable communities. I think that's the best way I would pitch it, that it's not only a social factor, but it also actually really adds to the economic growth of a country. Thank you, Kobe.
Thanks, Michelle. Can I ask Dr. Anthony to respond to Michelle's perspective on CSE and the importance of having it in the school system?
I think she has convinced me. What we need to do, though, is convince others. So you'll have to continue the advocacy and ensure that we don't drop the ball, because, a lot of this discussion has been ongoing for some time, and it seems that it's passing from one generation of Caribbean youth to another. But we have to not just talk about it, we have to get it implemented. And we have to find ways and means of how to convince other policymakers, other decision makers to incorporate it into legislation, into, the curriculum and so forth. One of the stakeholders I think that we'll also have to look at is really the faith-based organizations, because sometimes there's that narrow view that if we teach sexual and reproductive health in our school system that is somehow promoting promiscuity. And we need to demystify that. We need to get people to understand that's not the case. And so there are probably a number of stakeholders that we have to work with to be able to get this into our curriculum and to entrench it there so that it becomes an integral part of what young people would learn in the school system. So as I said, I'm convinced.
Thank you, Dr. Anthony. Now we're going over to Jean, who will be speaking on climate change and the environment. So overall, how do you see the roadmap prioritize issues of climate change in the region?
Thank you. Well, first of all, I would like to jump in terms of the topic we were speaking about, and I'm glad that the minister actually agreed with us. I also would like to add that we need to have a sexual and reproductive health right that is integral, but also from a perspective that is not only from heterosexual views of sexuality, because there are LGBTIQ folks, youth and adolescents who are part of our school system as well, and we need to make sure that they are getting the information that they need in order to exercise their rights to sexuality. And this also links to the mental health. Today, young people in the region are trapped in their houses, and these people are LGBTIQ, these young people are LGBTIQ, especially trans people, are in very hostile environments in their own houses with their own families, and we need to think about them as well. Jumping into my topic, which is climate change and environment, I believe that the roadmap does an amazing job in looking at climate change and environment from three approaches. First, by building up information, capacity, and knowledge for educators and young and adolescent people. But the roadmap proposed to do this by establishing a specific action, such as placing emphasis on the inclusion of climate change and its impact in education systems through the provision of materials and sources of information to educators. Also promoting the support of peer-to-peer education training and capacity building. Secondly, the roadmap focused in the need of having information, of creating information, and it proposed the necessity of collaborative research in which young people and adolescents are part of the process of creating information. So this information provides two main points. First, to allow policymakers to make decisions and to take decisions. And secondly, in order to create technology, in order to understand how the climate change and the environment is affecting the health of young people. For example, implementing disaster risk prevention and mitigation technologies. And finally, and this will be my favorite, I would say, it also promotes the development of policy from a young perspective, from a, I would say, human-centered design approach where young people are in the center of the design, and we are part of the solutions. For example, providing financial and regulatory support to for youth-led online and offline environmental campaigns, publications, and events. Also encouraging adolescents involved in making schools and communities sustainable through a school-based projects, such as planting trees and introducing solar water pump projects. So these are the three ways in which the roadmap is promoting the inclusion of the fight of climate change within its proposal. First, building up information and education. Second, building up and having information for decision making and for the creation of technology. And third and final, to put young people in the center of the decision. Over.
Thank you, Jane. Now, due to time, we are closing our launch now, and we'll go ahead with playing a video from Clarissa Medina, which speaks on mental health.
Perfect. This is just going to be over this is the Congress ceremony. It's a short 2-minute video. If you have to leave, feel free to leave. But thank you so much to everyone who participated. And let's get this going.
The young people are here in this room. They are present. They are ready. They are ignited by passion and ignited by purpose. We are ready to contribute to the conversation that impacts us, which we have been excluded and ostracized for so long. We came late. Some of us were absent. We did not show up to the party. Millennials like my son in his early 30s, my daughter early 40s, they came to the party. But you guys, Gen Xers, adolescents, you didn't come to the party. You know why? Because you were born in the party.
Yes, we have the know-how, we are resilient, and we are sufficiently creative that we can. We can do this. We can change the course of history in the Caribbean through rapid and sustainable improvement of the health and well-being of our young people.
A vision without a plan is just a dream. A plan without a vision is a chore. But a vision with a plan can change the world. I hope that I am not being too greedy in my expectation that we will have an inspiring and fruitful Congress which will indeed change the Caribbean.
Okay, I will hand it back to y'all for closing.
Okay, so thank you everyone for joining us today as we launch the roadmap and also the beginning of Adolescent Pregnancy Prevention Week in our region. I am truly grateful to have been one of your hosts and moderators, and now I'll pass it on over to Kobe if he has something to say.
Great. Yes. Thank you to Unfp and Paho for organizing. And as I said in the beginning, we know we're in the context of the pandemic, and oftentimes we might not have prioritized something like the roadmap, but just for ensuring that we keep with the agenda and pushing through with ensuring that we place the health, rights, and well-being of young people in the region front and center. I'm really pleased with that. So thank you to Paho and Unfp. Thank you to our amazing panelists. Dr. Frank Anthony, Minister of Health from Guyana. I'm so pleased with your presentation. I'm so proud that we're so progressive in our policy and advocacy. And I want to thank you for sharing with us. Mrs. Helen Royer from CARICOM, thank you for sharing and offering CARICOM's commitment and support. Mr. Jilks, Clarissa, thank you for the videos. Jean, Renata, Michelle, Pierre. I hope I got everyone's name, and forgive me if I'm forgetting, but thank you all so much for sharing. Lastly, we know that some persons are asking for copies of the roadmap. The roadmap will be emailed to everyone who have registered for the call, and so you can expect that in your email inbox as soon as possible. We thank you, and we hope that you will continue to support the rights, health, and well-being of young people in the region. Continue your incredible work. Continue to knock on doors. Continue to reach out to policymakers to ensure that you work together. And keep safe. Ensure that you sanitize, wear a mask, but also social distance. Don't go out unnecessarily. And we hope that we can see you all happy and healthy quite soon. Thank you so much.
One quick announcement is this isn't it. We have a few other things planned on Friday. We also have on Thursday, forgive me, on Thursday we have a youth link up. So we would love to hear from the youth that have participated here today. We're going to be posting it on social media from the Paho website and Unfp, and we'll be sharing it and trying to get everybody invited through Zoom. So keep an eye out for that on all your Facebook, Instagram, Twitter platforms. Okay, guys? Thank you so much for everything.
Bye. Take care.